Hi guys, and welcome to my retro watches. This is the next episode in the Zodiac Seawolf restoration, and this video I'm aiming to clean the movement, clean all these parts, some of it by hand and the rest of it will be going in the Ultrasonic and then also in the watch cleaner machine. And at the end of all of the cleaning processes, plan to try and put them back on the scope here and we can have a look and see if we've made any improvements or not. So I'm jumping straight into it because otherwise it's going to be a long video. So what we're looking at straight away is the main plate, and as you can see there is quite a lot of dirt there. Now I'm going to try and come in with a bit of pegwood and just see. It's hard because I haven't got the angle, but yeah, you can see it moves quite freely. And as we scan around, there's a bit of wear, there's a lot of scratches and stuff, gunk here. This is where the keyless would be, of course, so we expect a lot of grease and oil there. And this is I'm on the wrong side. I was going to say I saw earlier when I was looking where the barrel was, and that was pretty bad. So what we'll do is I'll flip it over and just get that in focus. Like so. So we've got a lot of grease and gunk here, especially, but we've also got wear. So where it looks a bit gold, that is clearly where the barrel's been rubbing. Now I don't know I can't remember how old this watch was. I think it was 1950s from memory. So you're going to see some wear for certain. And again, we're looking at some of the jewels here, which don't look too bad actually. So what you'd normally do is you'd try and peg out the holes with some pegwood, trying to get rid of some of that dirt and other holes that you can see. Use a bit of Rodico. Try and loosen up as much as you can before you try and wash the watch in the solutions. This jewel here is particularly dirty, as you can see. Now one feature I've not shown you on my microscope actually, because normally if I just move this, you can't really tell, but this is a glass bottom, and normally I've got a white insert here because it comes with a glass one or a white one, and the glass one is really for examining things from underneath, because this microscope has a light that shines up, and if I change it to that, as much as the camera doesn't like it, if I look down the lens of the microscope, I get a much more better definition, and I can see the jewels much better. Sadly, I was hoping it was going to come out on camera a lot better, but it just can't cope with it, can it? Unfortunately. I'm wondering if I can reduce the setting of the brightness. No, that doesn't make any difference really, but this is a really good. Now that looks good. So you can get a really good look at the jewels to see for any cracks and certainly for any dirt. I've only started doing this fairly recently actually, I must confess. No, it just doesn't like to resolve it, does it? But you can just about see there, look, that there's a lot of grease and dirt on that one. So it's just a good feature. At some point in time I will do a review of this microscope because I use it a lot in these videos. Quite a few of you comment. I think some of you actually bought it on the affiliate links as well, so it would be nice if you've got it, what you actually think of it. But yeah, they're really handy things to have. So let's just go back onto the view that this thing can cope with. So that is the main plate. Now we did look at certain components on the original video, albeit I know that the original video was quite a long time ago, but I have had Christmas in the way and some other things. So for instance, this is the fourth wheel, and I've now lost it. There we go. So there's a lot of, I had trouble with this the first time round, and now it looks like I'm going to have trouble again. So there is a lot of dirt and grime and a bit of rust actually on the stem here, which we'll need to clean off. So I'm going to cut to the bench and have a quick look at how I'm going to clean these. I've got a little method, and show you a bit more, because I suspect that there is some rust on here, because if you remember, it was sort of stuck in the centre wheel, and the centre wheel was also sort of stuck on the cannon pinion because there was quite a lot of rust. So we'll get those three components out in particular, and I'll show you what I'm going to try and do. Okay, here we're looking at the parts that I'm concerned with, or at least these three parts here. The main plate, we'll just get a good clean now on the bench first of all. So I said I was going to use pegwood. Now if you don't know what pegwood is, you buy it in little bundles like this. I'm not sure what wood it actually is, but it's used in watchmaking, and you can just use a knife or even a pencil sharpener or something to make little points on the ends or little tools on the ends. And I can then, for instance, find some of the dirty parts with the pegwood and try to loosen them off a bit. And then you want a really good point if you can get it, if you were going to peg some of the jaw holes, which I will do. But I tend to like going around, like I say, all these stubborn places first. We did know there was some on this side. As I say, it just loosens it all up. Helps it, because I've learned from experience, despite the fact I'm going to be washing these twice and very thoroughly, that you can still do all of the best washing and still get baked on grime that if you'd just done this at the start would have come off. So we can just see here, this is just a bit of really baked on something or other, some grime, and that probably wouldn't come out through cleaning, or not very easily. So hopefully you kind of get the picture. I will go over that a bit more thoroughly, of course. Now the other parts. So I was, if you remember the first video, and hopefully you've watched that, these three components are all sort of stuck together, and the center wheel, which is here, this is the fourth wheel. The fourth wheel goes through the center wheel, and that was stuck. And that was stuck because I'm assuming there was either gunk or rust in the tube or the hole that it goes through. And then of course there's also the cannon pinion as well, which I'm also going to try and clean just to be sure. So for the really small parts, it's kind of difficult to know what to use, but I am going to use a brooch. And you might just be able to see that here. And you can buy brooches in a sort of kit form, a bit like this. These are fairly cheap ones, they're all different sorts of sizes. Now normally you'd use these sort of things to open holes up a bit. They have sharp sides, so it's like a square shape, I think, or triangular, can't remember. And the shaft here, if you like, is tapered, so obviously thinner at the bottom, thicker on the end, and you would try and find the most appropriate fit, and then you can sort of open things out. They're great on cannon pinion, so if you've got a really, really tight cannon pinion, which does happen, then you can put a smoothing brooch down there, turn it a few times. It just takes half a thou of an inch or something like that out, maybe less, but it's enough just to loosen it up a bit. So the plan is just to try and use this brooch in these two parts. Hopefully it will fit, because I've not tested that yet, and we'll see. So again, it's gone in quite easily. It's hard for me to know if you can see this, and again, I don't want it to go too far, and I might actually have to use my fingers here, which is probably not the best. But I can actually see, I don't know whether you guys would, but I can see there's a lot of dirt on the end of the brooch, which is good news really, because that's what we want. And then I'm going to turn that round, of course, and oops, carefully try and do that on the other side. Now I've not really done this before, or this method before, because I've never had this problem. So I'm only thinking on my feet that this is probably the best way to try and clean that hole. And I really am not trying to force it on this broach, because if I do, that will remove material, and at this stage I don't particularly want to open the hole up more than I have to. This is literally, I can just feel it touching the sides. So it's hoping just to clean up as much of that rust as possible. I can definitely see it on the tool, but again, I'm not too sure whether you guys would be able to. So I will do that again. And then of course the cannon pinion. As you can see, actually the cannon pinion goes up quite a way on this. It's almost not the right size broach, just at the top here. And again, I don't want to be doing too much. Now hopefully this is going to work, because if it doesn't work and we can't salvage these parts, then of course I've got to source them. And you'll have to excuse me, but it is raining quite a lot here, and I've got a flat roof above me, so that might be coming through on the microphone. So that's the method I would be using on these parts. I realise now that it's not really in shot, so I do apologise. So what remains is the centre wheel, the fourth wheel here. And I actually asked a friend of mine in the group how best to try and clean one of these, and he said use a fiberglass brush, which I use all the time on digital watches actually. I never really thought of that, but it's a pretty good idea. So the plan now is to gently get that into some Rodico. And this is a fiberglass brush. Buy these all the time on eBay for very little money. You can twist them and the end gets bigger. I'm trying to keep it as small as I can, because that way it is a little bit more abrasive. And I will want to try and figure out a way in which I can just clean that stem. Now again, I will apologise, the camera work here in this video is probably going to be shocking. But I'm just trying to give you ideas if you've got this sort of problem, and how to combat it, because it's hopefully at the end we'll find out whether this is going to work. Because the plan now will be is to, as I say, clean the parts as best we can, inspect them, and then I would tentatively rebuild the movement, just the movement side, not the dial side, just to see if it's going to run first of all. And then if it runs, that's great, because then I can take it apart, oil it and do it properly, and rebuild it as it should be, as it should be done. So again, with my eye, I can just about see that this is actually getting a little bit brighter. So I will be pleased with that. I will do a little bit more work off camera, because I can get a bit closer to it with my head, because right now my head's about 1.5 foot away and at an angle, and that is not very good when you're dealing with these really small parts. So I'm going to clean those now a little bit more, and then we're going to start loading them into the machine, and I'll show you what I'm going to do there. Okay, it's now time for the cleaning. You might notice a bit of a sound difference as well, potentially, because I forgot to put my microphone in on the last part, so it's just using my phone microphone, which from experience isn't very good, but there you go. I'm not exactly a professional, am I? So I'm trying an old method. Long-time viewers of the channel will have seen this before, but new guys, well, you know, this is one way of doing it. Because this movement is quite old and evidently quite dirty, what I found is just running it through the watch cleaning machine is not enough. It won't clean all the old deposits off. Now there is one way of doing it, which would be to wash it all in essence of Renata, but you can't get that everywhere in the world. I certainly get it here in the UK. It's a hairspring degreaser, but it's been very, very good when I've used it on other components. The trouble with it is it's very expensive and it evaporates very rapidly. I've actually got some in this jar here. So what I'm going to do is I've got this little pot here full of just normal water, and I've got some dish soap, and I am going to just pour only a little bit of detergent in there. I want enough to sort of degrease, but if you put too much degreaser or you know, detergent, shall I say, can potentially strip some of the coating off the components, which is absolutely not desirable at all. I've tended to find that dish soap is pretty safe because it's not strong enough. I've used other detergents before and wrecked things, so I'm sticking solely with that. So I'm going to put all the components into the water. The small finer components or sensitive components are going to go into these little baskets that I've got here, which again you can get off my my website, or you can get them from eBay or anywhere else for that matter. The balance I'm going to leave out, and I've also got the pallet fork in here, and I'm going to leave that out as well, purely because I just washed those in Renata. They will go in there, and that will also do a cycle at some point through the Ultrasonic as well. So I'm going to now just load everything up, and then we'll wash them, and I'll show you it going off in the Ultrasonic. Right, okay, so all the parts are loaded into the baskets and into the water as well. One thing I didn't mention is the shock jewel on the main plate I've taken out and put in the Renata. I've already serviced the mainspring. I did that a few weeks ago because I was doing a whole load of them, so I did that as well at the same time. Unfortunately, there was nothing wrong with it. It seemed absolutely fine. One last thing before I go. This is, I don't know if you can see that part, that is the broken minute wheel, I think it was, wasn't it? It was broken, so it's pointless cleaning that. And I've left all the screws in and some of the really fine springs, and the reason for that is it's the first time in here. Usually when I'm doing my Seikos, I know my Seikos inside out with screws. These ones I am not too sure on, so I've photographed where all the parts were previous, so I can match the screws up to the parts. And what I will do basically to clean the screws is I'll just take out whichever ones are in that compartment. I'll put them in the Renata, give it a shake, give it a couple of minutes in that, and take them out and dry them, and then put them back in the same spots, so I know I've got the right screws for the right components. Somebody actually asked me that in the group the other day, or in the community section of this channel. So anyway, there we go. Everything's going to go into the Ultrasonic. Incidentally, these trays, man, would I love to sell you these trays. The amount of time I get asked for these, I've even thought about doing it, but I can't really. cousinsuk.com sell these. They're very, very, very cheap, and it's worth the investment. I've got quite a few of them, but for me to buy a load in and try and sell them to you guys, certainly when you're across the world, the postage is going to be crazy for me, so forget that. So I'll put these into the water, put the lid on, and then we'll go to the Ultrasonic. Right then, here's my Ultrasonic. I've had it warming up. I've got it set to 50 degrees and at centigrade, by the way. And then we've got a timer here. This all looks very Back to the Future. I'm going to clean these for 20 minutes. I've got everything in there. I've got some water in here. As I say, it's all nice and heated up. This is a great Ultrasonic. It's a metal bath, so it doesn't leak, because I've had plastic ones before which are rubbish. They end up blowing up. Works really, really well, and it was fairly cheap. I think it was less than £50 in the UK. This is the 2 litre version. This very brand also does a 1.3, a 3 litre, and then it goes up and up and up. I've got links for those, not that I'm trying to push it, but again, pretty good tool to have. So I'm just going to place that in the water there, and I actually weigh it down just a little bit with a piece of steel because the plastic thing likes to roll around in there. So then I'm just going to kick it off and watch it count down. Right then, a bit of handheld phone action now. Obviously that's just finished in the Ultrasonic, and I wanted to try and show you the water here. So it's a sort of mild tea colour. So clearly it has shifted quite a lot of dirt. I'll put it on this white tissue so that you can kind of see all the bits it's shaken off. So that's pretty good. What I'll do now is of course take all these out, and then I need to load them all into other baskets ready to go into the cleaning machine, which I will do now. I'm not going to bother filming that bit, it seems to be pointless, but we'll then run it through the cleaning machine and see what we get. Okay, here's my cleaning machine, and it's a vintage one. It works perfectly well. Runs by a little motor on the top that you can't really see in the shot. Spins this basket here, which I've got all the components in these 3 jars. So I've actually got two cleaning fluids, 1 rinse, and then over the back here is a heater, and I'm just going to spin them all in there pretty much for the same sort of time, so 10-15 minutes in each jar, and then of course I spin in the heater to dry them off. Once all that is done, then I can finally inspect the parts and see if they're going to be any good, ready for assembly. Right, the cleaning has finished. I hope you like the little time-lapse video there with a bit of music put on the top of it. I'm trying to keep you entertained whilst chatting to you while we're doing this. So I've just got a few parts out here, to be fair. There's some more in the baskets, and of course we've got the main wheels that we were looking at earlier on. So the plan is now just to put the main plate on the microscope, and a few of the components. We'll have a little look at those and see what we can think. I will probably end up looking at everything, but not on film, because otherwise that would take you another hour. I don't want to waste too much of your time. So I'll have a look, see how good they're going to be. Now, I've not looked at them, and I've been at this stage before with old dirty watches, and you've gone through all of this, and trust me, the cleaning was quite long. So it's 20 minutes in the Ultrasonic, and then each jar was, well, 15 minutes in each jar, and then another 15 minutes in the heating. So an hour and 20 minutes all told, and you can put all that effort in, and then you check them on here and find out that you need to go and do it all over again. So hopefully that's not going to be the case this time, but we'll see. So I'm going to go to the microscope now, and we'll start seeing the how it's progressed. Right, so here we go. This is the main plate, and straight away we'll go over to the barrel here, where the barrel would sit, and obviously we can see again all that wear, but to be honest, that looks okay. So these look okay. Ooh. Now then, I do see something there that I don't like, and I'm just dropping everything in the background here. So you can see this hole. That clearly isn't round, is it? So, oh, I do hope that that isn't going to be fatal at this moment in time. This has got something to do with the how the automatic works winds the mainspring. So clearly it's had a wobble on for quite some time, and it's wore away. I doubt it's supposed to be that shape. I'm going to have to assemble it anyway at some point to find that out. So it could be not a critical part. Certainly wear like that is not nice to see. However, we're here at the moment to see how good or bad the cleaning was. So around here is particularly dirty. Now there was a like a pin sticking up, and that did actually come out in the cleaning, because I found it at the end, and it's a little screw. So I put that safely away for now. Some of it looks like dirt, doesn't it? But it's not. It's corrosion and scratches. So again, back on over to here. So the jewels have all cleaned up very nicely. So let's just turn that one over and have a quick look at the other side. Now I told you I took the jewel out there, the shock jewel. And then this had quite a lot of debris and dirt, didn't it? It was all grimed and baked on. It's unbelievably scratched there. I can't remember exactly what would be there. It's going to be part of the keyless, but that's not normal damage, is it? That's I don't know what that is, but it doesn't look good. So far the main plate at a glance looks pretty good. So let's bring in some of the wheels and see how we fare with those. Okay, you might remember this wheel. I think this is the hour wheel. It's been so long since I took this apart, I can't remember all the parts, but it certainly looks like the hour wheel to me. And this was really bad. Now it has got something there, and that is kind of baked on, so I might have to get some pegwood, and it might look good, but a lot of this is tarnish rather than actual stuff that's still stuck on it. And compared to how it was, it's okay. The teeth still look intact, but in all honesty, that might, well, I'll attack it with a bit of pegwood, and I might just wash that again in a bit of Renata and just see if I can improve that a little bit. Next up will be the let's have a look at the center wheel. So I've got it sitting here, and I can still see quite a bit of, trying to think, is that corrosion, or, well, it's just on the lip, isn't it? Actually, if we look down, we can just see down the hole there. So maybe just a little bit more of a clean with that one, but generally I'm quite pleased, because this, I think, was one of the main culprits. Let's just turn it over. And try and look at those leaves. The leaves of the gears, if you like, here on the middle. We're getting a bit of reflection because I've had to try and put a bit more light down here. But no, that doesn't look too bad at all. So, okay, the cannon pinion. So what we can see here quite nicely, actually, is that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Sometimes you think there's dirt and it's just a speck. It's on the thing. It's on the bottom of the microscope base. So there is a little bit of dirt picking up on that, and again, that could be just because of this thing here. So I might just want to wash that again briefly, as I just thought it nearly went flying, but it didn't. So let's move that out of the way and keep it safe. And then we've got the one that's always been difficult to film, the fourth wheel. So let me just see if I can turn that over and focus in on that axle. So we've still got quite a lot of rust and tarnish on there. I'll try and put a photo up of how it was, but I think that is going to need a little bit more work, don't you think? It certainly must be improved, I think, but I need to have a better go at trying to get rid of some more of that rust there. How I'm going to go about that, I don't know. I'm just going to go back to the fiberglass pen, I think, clean it that way, and then put it in some of the cleaning fluid and let it soak in there for a little while. Maybe leave it in there overnight perhaps and see what happens. That said, you know, will it interfere too much in how it runs? Very difficult to say. I mean, obviously any sort of corrosion is not desirable, and I don't know what sort of, if we can even get this thing going, how good we're going to get it. And I'm reluctant to buy new parts necessarily straight away, but we'll see. I think the plan will be to try and clean that up a little bit more, and then I will rebuild the watch briefly to see if I'm going to be able to use these parts or not. I think the last one I'll do perhaps is the balance, because I've ran the balance through now in the Renata. Let's just see if I can bring this safely up here. And bring it into focus. These are pesky little things under the microscope, and I can't quite see. There we go. So it's sitting now nice and neatly into its hole, and you know what, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? The coils look nice and centric. The terminal curve just here looks okay to me. I am going to say straight away without hesitation that if nothing else, the balance is good. And that's always a relief to me, because balances are my little nemesis really. So I'm quite pleased. So I'm just actually got another bridge here, so let's just put that on. And again, everything looks pretty good there, doesn't it? These jewels are all nice and clean. So great stuff. I think most of the cleaning is done. We just need to go over a few little more of these stubborn parts to be sure. Okay, let's bring this video to a close. So I've shown you in this video the how dirty the movement was right at the start. We've inspected some parts, and then I've shown you the process that I've gone through to clean those parts as best I can. Given that it's pretty old and it's all baked on, I think the method I've used with a bit of detergent, the ultrasonic, and then the watch cleaning machine has given us some pretty good results. Now, granted, hasn't cleaned all of the muck off, but what we can see really is a bit of rust, certainly on that fourth wheel. The fourth wheel is what's concerning me right now. What do I do? Do I persevere, try and clean it a bit more with the fiberglass pen, and then clean it again through the machines, or do I try and just buy a new one if I can and be done with it? Back of my mind, I'd be really interested to know whether the watch is going to run to start with anyway, and then would it run with that existing fourth wheel, or would it run better with a new one? Of course it's going to run better with a new one, really. I'm answering my own questions. But, if you've got some suggestions, then please leave it in the comments below. Really would welcome what any of you have got to say, really, on that matter. And while we're on it, I've got another question, because hopefully some of you out there who are more experienced than me, maybe you've worked on one of these watches before. So it comes, you're not going to see this, I don't think, it might not focus, but it has this bezel on it. And now on dive watches that I'm familiar with, certainly Seiko ones, you can just pry these off to get them off and clean them. Now this is really, really stiff. And the concern for me is it's so flat to the case that I'm not sure whether I should pry it off, or if I did try to pry it off, whether it would even break it. So I'm at a real loss as to what to do. Probably leave it for the best right now, but I'm hoping that somebody may have removed one of these before and they can tell me what to do. My other thought is just to chuck it in the cleaning solution and let it wash, but then will it take some of the plating off? Will it take some of the paint off? Is it best just to leave as is? And it's really stubborn. It will twist and turn, but not only just. So I'll be keen to know if I could free that up, and if anybody's got any suggestions. So if you have, once again, please leave your comments down below. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this one. The next one in this series is going to be the rebuild, and let's hope that goes according to plan. But we'll find out one way or another. If it rebuilds and it doesn't do any good, then, well, maybe I've learned something. So thanks very much for watching. Please, if you are really into watches, come and join the Facebook group, Retro and Vintage Watches and Restorations. There's lots of us in there, and we're all as mad about this subject as possibly you guys are who are watching. So come and join the fun in there, and definitely check my Instagram out at My Retro Watches, where I try and post as much as I can of my collection or my daily wears, etc., etc. So see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.